Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining us tonight as we spend this next hour together. And as always, I do sincerely hope that you are safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family. I'll get right to it with my opening observation. It's education. You see, Nelson Mandela once stated that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And certainly as we go through this COVID-19 pandemic and the racial and political divisions that we are confronted with here in the United States of America, we can use some education as the most powerful weapon, in addition to faith, to change the world. Now, I'm particularly struck by the value and significance of our HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. This very network that my show operates on, the Black News Channel, is headquartered in Tallahassee, which is where the famous FAMU is located, Florida A&M University. But I want to talk about HBCUs in total for a moment and the significant contributions that they have made to America. You see, they produce 42% of the country's Black engineers, 80% of its Black judges, and 40% of its African-American members of Congress, HBCUs, making sure that ordinary students become extraordinary human beings, doing great things to better our community. And certainly at a time like now, when education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world, we need to rely on the strength of our HBCUs and the students and professionals who have graduated from those colleges. And those are my opening observations. Joining me now is my first guest, and I really like this gentleman. He's Jonathan Hollyfield. He is Executive Director of the White House Initiative on Historically Black Colleges and Universities. And Jonathan, it's good to have you on the program today. It's been a while since we've talked. Are you safe and well during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for your expression of concern. My family and I have been blessed, and we are safe in sending the same wishes, return wishes for you and yours, as well as your audience.
I appreciate you, man. And I certainly appreciate all that you're doing there to help out historically Black colleges and universities. As you're aware, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has broken some news. Its Office of Minority Health announcing the selection of Morehouse, the Morehouse School of Medicine, as the awardee for a new $40 million initiative to fight COVID-19 in racial and ethnically, socially vulnerable communities. We've been talking a lot about the disparities, the health disparities that exist within the African-American community. And on this show, Jonathan, we were talking about the fact when COVID first started, it would have an adverse impact on the African-American community. So I think this is a step, what do you think this is a step in the right direction for the Trump administration and the White House initiative on historically Black colleges and universities to get engaged through these HBCUs to fight it?
Absolutely, and to perhaps frame it up with a little more precision, it is a continuation of multiple right steps. This is the latest in a series of prioritization of HBCU. This collaboration, this partnership led by Morehouse School of Medicine, obviously in conjunction with HHS and the Office of Minority Health, is groundbreaking. Think about it, Kelly. For the first time, an HBCU medical school is at the forefront of fighting a global pandemic. Not only is basic scientific research important to fighting this scourge, also the complementary kinds of research, communication of pertinent information, empowering those with a history of connecting to vulnerable populations to provide information, health services, overcoming the social determinants of health, those underlying conditions that have really contributed to exacerbating the negative impact that COVID-19 has had on African American communities. I think Morehouse School of Medicine, along with which will be a network, a national network of partners, have a real opportunity to prove the model and position themselves along with a national partnership network for additional investment to meet future national health needs.
You know, Jonathan, that's very important because you're talking about a network and a nexus, a system wherein historically Black colleges and universities like Morehouse can actually be actively engaged in their communities, which they already are, but to be on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. Do you see this expanding to universities like Howard and Meharry and Charles Drew out on the West Coast? Is that possibility in the pipeline?
I don't think there's any doubt that possibility is in the pipeline. That is my fondest hope. And I think the expertise that the Morehouse Coalition, that's my word, not an official designation, the network that will be coming together anchored by HBCU medical schools with all kinds of spokes of minority-focused health organizations, community health organizations, HBCU and other minority-serving institutions. The big point, the breakthrough, is that they are anchored by HBCU, and in this case, the Morehouse School of Medicine.
We're coming back with more after the break. I want to ask you something. The National Black Church Initiative, Reverend Anthony Evans, the president of that, has wanted to sit down and state that there needs to be a dialogue between the Black community and the Trump administration, between the Congressional Black Caucus and the Trump administration, because the only way you're going to deal with these inequities and these disparities is to sit down and have valuable dialogue and not pick each other apart and tear each other apart, but to sit down and find a way to move forward. Having stated that, how do we do that from your vantage point? How do you see that happening? Because it seems to me like you are already doing with a lot of presidents of these HBCUs. Mm-hmm. How do we move that forward so that our children and our children's children will have the valuable education they need through these HBCUs, which to date has graduated some of the best students and best productive citizens in our country?
It's a great question and a great framing. And keep in mind that 5 weeks into President Trump's tenure, he met with almost all of the HBCU presidents. 5 weeks. That's also when he signed the Executive Order 13779 that actually created the White House Initiative on HBCU for his presidency. By far, the earliest any American president has established an HBCU executive order. What does that do? It not only provides material leadership through the administration, it signals to the other parts of the administration throughout the federal government and the federal agency and to the nation that HBCU are a priority. My encouragement, Kelly, is that we would continue and arrive at the table with all of your preferences in hand, but girded by a constructive mindset. I have no doubt that there are deals to be had among thoughtful, constructive people who want to get there. Do not abandon any of your beliefs. Bring them, but also complement that with a constructive mindset, and there's no doubt we can continue to move this ball down the field.
Sounds to me like you're saying, let's act like grown-ups and come to the table and have a good meeting and dialogue so that we can get some action and take some responsibility and accountability for our missteps. on all sides. The final question, I want to circle back to COVID-19, Jonathan. When this vaccine, there will be a vaccine that will come down the line. And there is the concern, will this vaccine reach the underserved communities, the African-American communities, the brown communities? Can HBCUs in some way interface with this to make sure that these underserved communities have the vaccine at the ready?
Let me frame the response this way. What you're talking about is enhancing the anchor institution function of HBCU. So not only can they be centers or hubs for the availability of healthcare, in this case, the precise COVID-19 vaccine, but also for the provision of education and economic opportunities, entrepreneurship. So that's the best framing for our institutions. We are blessed with a unique set of assets, 100 institutions born out of an unconscionable past, resilient for over 175 years and still contributing. I dare say there's not a nation on earth with a tough racial past that has a set of institutions that are the outcome of that experience that endure to this day as a set of contributing assets to the nation's prosperity. So we have a unique asset, a unique value contribution, and I think just as you described and more, our institutions can continue to be that.
Jonathan Hollyfield, thank you. And real quickly, your message to Black students who are wondering what's going to happen in this COVID-19, what would it look like when they return to classes, and what's your note of inspiration and motivation to young Black students who are saying, I've got to get my life together and make sure that I aspire to greatness, because what's going on now racially, I can make a difference if I go to school, get an education, and make an impact on my community, the nation, and the world?
I think you said it very well. I will amplify your question in this way. Look back. We arrived in 1619, and for those 401 years, we have persevered. We have come through troubled times. We have come through the unconscionable experience of slavery. Yet we are still here as an intact people making significant contributions to our nation and to the world. Let's draw strength. Let's be informed by the lessons of the past, but not let them control the actions of the present and future. The past informs, it does not control. We control.
Well said, my friend. Good to talk to you, Jonathan Hollyfield.
It's a pleasure, Kelly. Thank you, and take care, sir.
You're always welcome here anytime. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're back with more after this. So one of the top stories circulating right now here in the Washington, D.C. area is what took place on Capitol Hill Thursday. And that's when the House passed its version of the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. You'll recall that George Floyd died a month ago. And as a result of that, there have been sweeping changes called for within the halls of Congress. Now, the House has passed its version of what it wants to do in police reform, yet the Senate appears to be stalemated on all of this. So I thought I would bring in a person who can really talk about this and address what's going on in terms of police reform, police training, and actively caring for people policing. And that's a new thing that really puts community policing on steroids, if you will, because it talks about the better angels being at work with police departments all across the United States. That man is Bobby Kipper. Bobby, you are the founder and executive director of the National Center for the Prevention of Community Violence, and that includes police violence and violence that goes on in our communities. What do you think about this House bill that's been passed first? And then we'll talk about the Senate version, which is still, it looks like it's dead and will be stalemated because of the Democrats in the Senate not agreeing with what the Republicans want to do.
Well, Kelly, thanks for having me. I looked at both bills and have examined them over the last couple of days. And I think that one of the things with the House bill that probably created some issues, at least with the Senate, it was fairly restrictive on some of the things that they were requiring. It was specific about the training that would be required at the local and state level with police departments. I think one of the things that we have to understand when they're trying to pass these bills in Washington, that most of it falls on the responsibility of the state. Each state across the country has their own license and training requirements at the state level for actually hiring and training police officers from basic academy all the way through advanced training. So that one size cannot fit all. And the reason I think that's important is some states in our country have done a really excellent job of updating their training standards to include information that was in the House bill. They wanted information about bias and implicit bias. That was done through the 21st Century Policing Report that came out of the Obama administration, where that implicit and explicit bias training actually was almost a requirement through then the president's office across America. And I know that there are a number of police departments that really signed on for that. A number of agencies and probably a vast number of those agencies were involved in that type of training. It was something that was brought from the top down, and it went through states and police departments throughout America. So that had already been done. And my concern about some of this is that if we continue just basically mandating the same training, are we getting the solutions we want? So I would say that there's a problem with that. If police departments have already been requiring their officers to go through sensitivity training, ethnic diversity training and those type of things, it would seem to me, from my professional viewpoint, that we have to go a step further than that. This needs to be more of an advanced human rights approach as we deal with whether it's through de-escalation or whatever training we do. But I would like to echo the fact that I really believe that, the federal government, the House and the Senate can give guidance to the states and the local communities, but they cannot force feed what they're trying to do. Example would be Minneapolis, who's actually looking at doing away with their police department. So when you look at those type of things, that had nothing to do with, what the federal government wanted. It had everything to do with what they're doing on the local level. So until we appeal to the state and local level and on both of these versions, I don't think we're going to get any mileage out of it. And this has been done before, Kelly. So I think we have to take a more holistic approach to what we're doing.
You're watching The Kelly Wright Show. We'll be back with much more after the break. We've seen how members of Congress have had a very contentious debate about police reform. One congressman, a black congressman, Cedric Richmond, going up against a very heated exchange with Congressman Matt Gaetz, who's white, and it boiled down to Congressman Richmond explaining what it's like to be a black man in America and have the situation of dealing with racism, and then having that overlap into your relationship with police. And Bobby, you know that my family and other black families have had to talk about how we encounter and engage with police officers, how we should be complicit and comply. And yet the main thing is to try to get home so that we can deal with the situation once we get home. From your vantage, having served as a police officer for 30 years and having so many exchanges with so many different communities, black, white, brown, yellow, what have you, what is going to bring a solution to the racial divide that we see experienced within the police ranks? And how do we bridge that divide so that all police officers, white and black, and brown and yellow can serve, protect and serve the citizens who are Black and of color?
Well, again, I think Joe South had a song years ago that says, "Walk a mile in my shoes."
Mm.
And my belief system in our education of police officers, until you understand the plight and the issues of communities of color who basically have fought for opportunity. You and I have had this discussion over the years. Until you understand what that looks like from their perspective, you won't understand why it's important for us to go in with best foot forward. The other thing I think is really important is to understand that even when we try to teach de-escalation techniques, we've got to do more accountability all the way around, from leadership all the way through. And that's not just leadership in policing, that's leadership of communities. I think leadership in communities ought to do a better job of educating the entire community on the issues that communities of color face. I don't think we've done that. I think that we sort of understand, but it's almost like Kelly, I call it a cul-de-sac mentality.
Hmm.
Unless you live in the shoes of people, you don't understand. I don't understand what it's like for my son or my daughter to be stopped by a police officer and then to be terrified simply because of the color of their skin. That has got to be part of how we educate people. Again, we've really got to look at taking the politics out of this. These are issues of the heart. We talked about issues of character, and every community has a character to it. And so until you learn the character of a community, right now we train police officers and we put them, regardless of what color or ethnic background they are, we put them in communities that many of them have no knowledge of what the people face in those communities. We've got to do better educating, our ride-alongs and everything that we're doing. We should have to take field trips out of the academy into communities and do interviews with citizens that live there and ask them face to face, before you go on the beat to be a police officer, what is your biggest fear and what do you face as a citizen in this community? We don't even do that.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, there are a lot of things we can do. We got to know one another better, and we got to realize that it starts with a heart-to-heart conversation.
A lot has happened since the death of George Floyd, and one of the good things coming out of that, if there's anything that can come out of that tragedy, is the fact that people are now talking, people are now listening, and people are taking action. And if Congress can't do it, the American people need to and can do it. Bobby Kipper, founder and director of the National Center for the Prevention of Community Violence, works with police departments all across the United States, as well as different communities all throughout the United States. I appreciate all that you're doing. And by the way, you have a very good book out there that people should be reading. I'm going to give you a shameless plug because it's really time for this book to be read again. It's on the Wall Street best-selling list, Actively Caring for People Policing. That's really something that I think all police departments and even community leaders need to address. How do we actively care for people policing as well as care for each other? Bobby Kipper, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate it.
All right. Talk to you soon. Back with more after this. Welcome back to the show. So yesterday, you'll recall that we were talking about HIV in the Black community and how we prevent it. It was a wonderful segment with Dr. Donna McCree, who was there to talk to us about it. She's not here today, but we have two other guests that we're bringing back, and that is Dr. David Melbranch and a new guest to add to the list, Freda Jones, CDC Let's Stop HIV Together participant and HIV prevention educator. Now, in the previous segment on yesterday, we spoke with CDC expert Dr. Donna McCree. And what she said was really impactful, as well as Dr. David Melbranch. And we talked about the increased risk of HIV that some Black communities face today. We learned some HIV basics and what we can do to protect ourselves and our communities. And that's so important. And one of the key lessons was how to become undetectable. Being undetectable, and there's a reason why I'm emphasizing that word, because it means that treatment is working so well and there are so few copies of the HIV virus in the blood that HIV cannot be sexually transmitted, thereby being undetectable. So Dr. David Melbranch, that is a remarkable fact. And what might prevent someone with HIV from taking the steps to become undetectable?
Yeah, Kelly, that's a great question and kind of where the rubber meets the road. I think from a healthcare perspective, it's important to stay on top of your health by knowing your HIV status, but actually sometimes access to care, let alone culturally sensitive care, can be a challenge. And even though we have very effective treatments available, much better than we had in the 80s and 90s, HIV stigma can stop people from getting the care they need. When I say the phrase HIV stigma, what I mean by that is negative beliefs, actions, attitudes, and statements about people that have HIV. It's rooted in a profound misunderstanding and sometimes an actual fear of HIV itself. HIV stigma is important because it can stop people from getting tested, from getting or starting on treatment, and actually from sharing their status with loved ones, something we call HIV disclosure, all because they fear being judged or losing relationships.
You know, that's so important because stigma, it sounds like it induce fear and keep someone from doing the right thing. And on this program, we want to talk about faith over fear and knowledge over fear. So I want to bring in now Freda Jones, who can tell us her personal experiences, if you will, Freda, with HIV and HIV stigma associated with it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for asking that. What I see is that many people think you can get HIV still from sharing food, kissing, sharing a toilet seat, sharing drinks, even holding hands, which all of those are not true. These untruths make it difficult for some of people to even talk openly about their journeys and receiving the support that they desire, because they want that support. They want to feel that need from their friends, their family, the loved ones, even their co-workers, and especially in the faith community, and etc. Lack of support may cause someone to isolate themselves and internalize the harmful ideas that others may even hold against them. At first, having HIV, with me, it was difficult and it was confusing because I didn't have any knowledge of HIV. I only saw the other side of HIV. I didn't see the professional women side of it. I often found myself isolating from fear of being judged and not supported or even loved. What I now talk about is how I made that decision for myself not to let the stigma rule my health in any type of way. I'm in control of taking my medicine, which keeps me healthy. It keeps me healthy, and it also prevents me from getting HIV to my partner. Conversations about HIV dating, it can be difficult sometimes. You know, at first it was very difficult, but now I talk about it as HIV is a commonplace as talking about anything else. For me, when I hear people being fearful about HIV and sharing misinformation, I take the opportunity to point them into the facts, give them the correct information. Not everyone will feel the same in every situation that we do that. But I try to do my best as often as I can to help fight the stigma and to get the facts out there in the community, especially to our people in our community.
Let me ask you another question, Freda. What can we do to stop the HIV stigma?
We can do a lot. Us as a community, we can do a lot. We can make a huge difference by ending the stigma by supporting loved ones that's living with HIV and also getting educated about HIV facts and not the misconceptions. You can also make a point in your personal life to talk about HIV testing with your friends, your families, and to share your experience. Talk openly with your partner about getting tested, about going to get tested together and sharing those choices. We make it our business to prevent HIV, and it helps us to reduce the risk. This is especially important in the Black community because of HIV, how it affects us. That's why it's very important in the Black community, because how it affects us. So it's important for all of us to get this informed and take action for ourselves and our community. What I can say is our call to action is to go to CDC. Let's Stop HIV Together. Go to the website, www.cdc.gov/Stop HIV Together, to find some free resources to help talk about HIV with your loved ones.
You know, I really appreciate you for stating all of these facts about your own personal experiences about HIV stigma. And Dr. David Melbranch, I want to thank you as well for weighing in on this important issue and giving us so much important information and education about it. And please pass along my regards to Dr. Donna McCree of the CDC. You know, this is such an important topic. I can't end it alone without having a final word from both of you. And so, Fred, I'll begin with you. Your final word to America, particularly the Black community, in terms of HIV prevention.
What my final words would be is to educate yourself. I think it's stigma due to the lack of knowledge. So if we put more knowledge out there and more facts and erase the misconception, we can erase some of the stigma of HIV.
And Dr. David Melbranch, please.
Yeah, I think my final parting thoughts would be just around the emphasis on unity. And I think particularly when a lot of our Black communities, there's a lot trying to divide us at this time. And we use a phrase in HIV prevention and treatment called HIV neutral. And what that basically means is that regardless of your HIV status, whether you're HIV negative or you're HIV positive, there's a role that all of us can play in ending the epidemic. So we all have to work on this together and basically try our best to come together as a community and work towards making this ending HIV by 2030 a reality.
Thank you both. Dr. David Melbranch, Frederick Jones, please pass along again my gratitude and thanks to Dr. Donna McCree. Listen, remember, America, remember this very clearly. We all have a role to play in ending HIV. We'll be back with more of the show after this. Welcome back to the program. So joining me now, my good friends, George and Tandra Gregory. They head up a group called Journey for Life. It's their organization to reach out and help married couples as well as relationship coaching. And they also are NFL chaplains. Need to point that out because it's very important, the function, the role that they play with the Los Angeles Chargers. So guys, you know, we're talking about strengthening the family. It's near and dear to me, and I know it is to you as well. Talk to me about the subject matter of two people being married and, you know, they're not the same. They see things differently. Differences can really, well, you take it from there.
That is so true, Kelly. Differences, because we tend to be attracted to people who are different than us, because in the beginning, it's cute. We admire them and it's like, oh, I like that he thinks this way and does things this way. But as time goes on, those differences, we become less tolerant of each other and they start to be irritations and they start to cause conflicts in your relationship. And you can either allow these differences to bring you together or tear you apart, right? And so some of the ways that George and I were different, we had different backgrounds. Like we've talked on the show, me and you grew up in a single parent home with a strong woman at the helm. He grew up in a 2-parent home where his dad is the dominant one and he was at the helm of leadership. So our backgrounds were different and we clashed on that. We clashed on from minor things like how you should fold a towel, you know what I'm saying, versus not folding a towel.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Kelly, the main thing is you could choose a plethora of topics,
yes,
right? We're the average couple. We've had our issues. We've had to fight through issues, but people at home in quarantine, they're probably a microscope is on each other's differences, right? And you pull,
Lord.
Yeah. So if you feel that way, I'm sure your viewers are thinking the same way. They're probably going to get their spouse right now saying, come listen to these guys, because you're right. The differences will pull us apart, but in major ways, when we talk about just our backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
Like we tell when we do our talks, we tell people this: you are marrying more, or you're married to more than what you see.
With your natural eye.
With your natural eye.
Yes.
They've got a history, they've got a background.
Yes.
And so when you say that one word,
Mm-hmm.
it filters through decades of things that they've heard or we had to respond to. And so it's kind of like a kung fu fighter, if you will, that when that offense is coming at you, you're just doing that defense. And so sometimes our differences put us on the defense.
Yeah.
And we've just got to be better people at not allowing our differences to break us apart, but instead pull us together.
So you would think it would be minor that, oh, well, you come from two different, a 2-parent household or 1-parent household. It's just that I thought that I was running things and that women run this world, right? And so that's how I came in.
She listened to too much Beyonce. That's what she listened to.
And he came in thinking men run this thing, right? And typically that will create like this power dynamic of who's in charge, whose voice reigns in the household. And that literally was something we bumped up against, but we didn't even know we were fighting that. We didn't know that that was the differences that were clashing, is that I thought I was in charge. He thought he was in charge. And we never had a discussion about who was in charge. And so it caused a lot of conflicts when we first got married. So we had to figure out.
Yeah. And most of that was expectations, right? Like from my vantage point, my dad, a 2-parent household, he ran the show. He spoke, everybody listened. In her place, her mom did it. And so expectations were wherever we were raised from, that's how it was supposed to be. And yet marriages today, we've got to realize that just because our parents had a marriage this way doesn't mean that we have to do the same things. And so we have to sort of agree to, hey, let's chart our path out. That's why we like pre-marriage counseling, or we like marriage mentors or marriage coaches, because you could be in a rigid thinking process and somebody has to say, you know what, why do you have to do it that way? So for instance, here's a funny about us, Kelly, is that small 4-letter word, time, T-I-M-E, that almost sent us to divorce court, right? And I'm sure some of your viewers are hunching each other.
Tapping each other.
So I was the one my dad taught me to be 15 minutes early. Right.
And I grew up that everyone gives you a 15 minutes grace period, right? And no one really wants you to be on time.
Right. So we're already at a 30-minute difference, right? And that 30 minutes, oh man, we had some of the most heated arguments, or we call it intense fellowship, right? But we couldn't understand. She couldn't understand, why was I at the door screaming or yelling and saying, hey, let's go. I got to get there on time. She's like, wait a minute, we got plenty of time.
Yeah, I just thought he was uptight because we didn't know like that we had a different perspective of what being on time meant. We had two different views. When somebody said be there at 10, we weren't working on the same playing field. I was going for, let me get there by the end of my grace period. And he was like, let me get there 15 minutes early.
Well, the problem, Kelly, with that was when we first got married, I was in a traditional African-American church setting where you processed in with the choir. The pastor cannot come in after everything's already started. That would be disrespectful. So for me, it was about, you are not valuing how I'm wired. And that's a big part about our differences. We have to realize that sometimes we just have to ask each other, what's your value? Because until we respect each other's differences on a value base, we're always going to think we're better than them. And that's what's going on in the world right now. That's what's going on with the racial tension, is my value is different than your value. If I don't see where you're coming from, then you're wrong, I'm right. And in a marriage, that's a recipe for divorce.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, you guys have something going on Saturday nights, I understand, on Facebook. Where can we check it out?
Yeah, we go live on actually Facebook with our Facebook page and our IG page. And you can find us at both of those if you just type in the @ Journey for Life Now. We do talks. We call them Saturday Night Lives. It's just us. We're talking about a topic like tonight. We unpack it. We don't come across as experts and we know it all. We tell you the deep, dirty secrets of our marriage. We try to do it in an authentic and yet inspiring way so that we can help people on their journey. Kelly, it's at 6:30 Pacific time and 9:30 East Coast time every Saturday. 6:30 our time, West Coast, and East Coast can tune in at 9:30 their time. And we do it only for about 20 or 30 minutes, but it's real fun and it's live. We take questions, and so have your viewers to call in sometimes or jump on.
Yeah.
And the point is, be on time.
On time, right? Not fashionably late, not 15 minutes early, but on time.
I love you guys, and I value you, and I value your time.
Yes.
George and Tandra Gregory here on the Kelly Wright Show, talking about strengthening the family. And we can strengthen the family and have fun while we're doing it, at least laugh at ourselves. And that's a good way of valuing ourselves, to learn how to laugh at our own shortcomings, our mistakes, and say, you know what? I think I can get over this. Let's get this together. Thank you guys. Love you so much. Have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
All right, we're back with more after this. Welcome back, and now for my final word. Chance the Rapper once stated, "Something I try to instill in others is to just be a good person. It's a decision you make 1,000,000 times a day. But if you just keep trying, good stuff comes to you in an ordained way." I like that, Chance the Rapper. And I also like you. And thank you for watching this program. Your support means all the world to me. Hopefully you've been righted, ignited, and united to keep spreading love, freedom, and peace. Have a great weekend, everyone. God bless.
If our hearts beat inside a hateful rhythm. You see, love isn't bought, but comes with a price of forgiveness, and we all bleed the same. Yeah. If you don't feel it now, just wait. It's coming on, the love train. Just give it time, give it time. Get on board. That means you and you
on the love train.
get on board.
All creeds and colors,
Brothers
all sisters and
and
brothers
sisters,
on the love train.
get on board the love train. Everyone's invited.